I don't normally say things are broken, but in this case I have to. The matting hand is crazy. This weapon is insane, specifically because of the matting spear hand strike. On the surface it doesn't look like much. It's a slow attack. Of course it has fire damage and matting that you can build up while doing it, but it doesn't really seem very effective in combat because you leave yourself vulnerable. But that's not the case at all here, because if you time this right, this causes instant madness, and it leaves players in PvP vulnerable for you to finish them off like you see me doing right here. The matting spear hand strike makes your hand into the shape of a spear before unleashing and plunging a stab that penetrates the body of the enemy. This afflicts foes with a large dose of madness. Everybody that I hit in PvP so far ended up instantly being engulfed with madness. If you didn't know, madness is one of the many status effects in Elden Ring. It's been popularized, especially with the aging untouchables with how they do it to you. But it's a status effect that applies either a beneficial or detrimental effect to the target, because targets who are afflicted with madness lose FP and take damage, so you leave them in a very vulnerable state. Damage equal to 100 plus 15% of the target's max HP, and causes FP loss of 30 plus 10% of their max FP. But here's why it's so broken, because when you hit them with the matting spear hand strike, they instantly get afflicted with madness and it leaves them vulnerable to attack. And with the way I have this build set up, they're not going to survive. I don't know what it is about these matting hand gloves, but the only word that I could think of to describe this build is irascible. This means having or showing the tendency to become easily angered. This description fits right into the fantasy of this build, because every time I hit somebody with these matting hands, it seems like they either get stunned or staggered. Then I'm able to execute in PvE, especially even bosses. Now I know what you're thinking. You immediately compare this to the martial arts style. It's similar, right? The attacks are pretty similar, but it's different because martial arts has a skill that makes you immovable while charging it up. I'll call it the dim-mak, the death touch. It's pretty sweet, but it doesn't leave players vulnerable like this does. I mean, it can by knocking them down, but madness is another thing that affects you psychologically. Anyways, you can get these matting hands in the Abyssal Woods, and it's crazy that the way that I killed that guy was in the Abyssal Woods. It was such an ironic scene and I loved it. And by the way, this is only like my third time playing PvP. The other couple times that I played PvP, I got double teamed and I was just really excited, so I ran out there playing reckless, but I decided to play a little bit more tactful in this one. The matting hand are very easy to get. You can get them from the Abyssal Woods. As soon as you head towards the abandoned church, you'll find an enemy named Matting Hand, and when you kill him, he'll give them to you. By the way, what is that skill that this guy's using? I want that. Now I'm going to show you what this build is like in a second, but I just want to tell you a few more things, because this has two playstyles. The fact that it scales with 4 attributes, strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith, is a crazy feat, because this way you could play from close range and long range, and with the dexterity you could move like a ninja, right? And I was doing some studying about the scaling and how it works. If you notice, you'll see some weapons that have D scaling or E scaling, B and A, whatever, and depending on what Ash of War you add, you can alter these scaling grades and make them significantly better. But with named weapons like the matting hand, you cannot add any Ash of War, which means you can't change it to quality, heavy, blood, or poison. You can't change the grading scale at all. And when you upgrade the matting hand as much as you can, it maxes out at a D tier. And that sounds bad, but it's okay. This only means that in said categories, strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith, the more you invest in the attributes, it won't be beneficial as if it were B tier or A tier, which is why I only have about 30 faith and 25 intelligence. And I'm still destroying cats. See, what you want to invest in is the dexterity and the strength, so that when you get an opportunity to take somebody out, you won't fail. Like I said, I don't know what it is about these matting hand, but when I charge my attacks, especially two-handing these things, they're going down. And because there were no more bosses left, I went back and fought this boss just to see how the matting hand fared against him, and they were pretty dope. So let me show you what I got going on in this build. I'm using Rakshas's armor, and for every piece that you have on here, it increases the damage by an incremental percentage and increases the damage that you receive by an incremental percentage. So you want to be careful. This is like a double-edged sword using this armor set. I really like it because I like to live on the edge, and I just like this circlet of light that I got for beating Consort Radahn. I think it's pretty sweet. And here are the matting hand gloves, leveled up to 10. As I said, they scale in strength, dexterity, faith, and intelligence. And you don't need much in order to do that. You only need like 13 intelligence and 20 faith, but I wanted to get a little bit more because, as I said, since it's at descaling, you're not going to get that much of a value when you level up each point. So it's okay to have low stats here. But as you can see, it has 154 plus 141 fire damage, and I'm assuming that's because of the faith. But I want to show you the bread and butter of this build, and those are the talismans. Of course, you know we got the 𝐤𝐤𝐬's exaltation. This is what I got from the Abyssal Woods. And the reason why this talisman is so great is because madness in the vicinity increases attack power. Now, it doesn't say that the enemy has to be afflicted with madness. It says madness in the vicinity. So if I'm afflicted with madness by the enemy, I'm going to deal more damage. You see why I said this build is called irascible? Because I'm always going to be upset. I'm always going to be pissed off, and I'm going to take it out in whoever's in my vicinity. Not to mention, I got the Talisman of the Dread. This raises the potency of magma. Now, you know the Madding Hands deal fire damage, so this is going to increase that damage as well. I'm thinking it's like 20%. I don't know why it doesn't show the percentage here, but you can definitely tell. This right here, the Shard of Alexander, I got before the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC came out. Now this greatly boosts the attack power of skills. So that means the Madding Spearhand Strike is going to be insanely powerful. You don't know how hype I got when I just saw them immediately burst out into madness. I'm like, yo, this does not work in PvE. Only PvP. I mean, maybe it does, but the enemies in PvE don't stay alive long enough for this to happen. So it just leaves them vulnerable and allows you to just go to town. And I like to do my heavy attack because first of all, it's fast and is a crit, so it deals a lot of damage, which is why I have the Dagger Talisman, which enhances critical hits by 20%. Now, the equipment right here is your preference. I like to use my Mimic Tear Ashes always, and whatever else you like to use. Now you could, if you want to be a real nuisance with this build, which I am going to do, is get some swollen grapes and craft this frenzied pot right here, the frenzied flame pot. I'm sure you could farm winter lantern flies in the Abyssal Woods and you'll find mushrooms everywhere you go. That's all it requires to craft one of these, and you can get 3 cookbooks from the Abyssal Woods as well. So you can really do some crazy stuff with this build, man. Now for my dexterity and my strength, I told you I wanted that to be pretty high. 60 strength, 60 dexterity, and I'm going to make another build, so I didn't want to go and rebirth again. So these attributes are pretty much for a well-rounded playstyle that utilizes status effects, because as I said before, this patch is focusing a lot on strength and dexterity. So you want to put points there. And vigor, if you're shifty enough, you don't need much, especially in PvP. Just play tactful and do what you gotta do. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this build. I'm gonna deep dive more into it and try to focus on my flask so I can see what I can add to mix things up even more, since I have more faith and intelligence. Let me know what you think about this down below in the comment section. I am stoked about this build. At first I thought that it wasn't really all of that, but then some things happened that I just did not expect, and I couldn't be more happy about them. So I highly suggest that you use this, especially in PvP, because it leaves players vulnerable and allows you to end fights immediately and very efficiently. Oh yeah, I forgot to say one more thing. If you want to use the Madding Hand and have more defense, because everybody doesn't like to dual wield, the perfect shield that you can utilize with this is the fingerprint, because guess what? The fingerprint deals 70 madness buildup when you charge and use its skill. Add on to the fact that you have the Alexander Talisman, which greatly increases the damage you deal with your skills. If you have any other suggestions about this build, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you want more details on how to get everything that I have in this build, check this video out right here. And that'll do it for this one, fam. I'll see you over there. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you're new. Be right out.